Right, this one should be a good one for Tracy. So there's been an explosion of buy now, pay later e-commerce solutions, essentially encouraging online shoppers to spend more and keep more. I think we're finding now that the buy now and pay later services are being better regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. So I guess what we're looking at really is how can brands be more responsible for the spending and financial well-being of their customers, and more so, should they be responsible for it? We'll go to you first, Simon, on this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was talking to Beauty Bay a couple of years ago when they were deploying Klarna, I think, and they did some really interesting stuff. Beauty Bay, they take some really, really big risks, and it tends to pay off for them a lot around UX as well. But they looked at Klarna and deployed it, and the risk to them there, I'll talk about it from a purely commercial basis to start off with, was they were worried whether it would cannibalize payday spend. Would it just be a transition of money that was spent on payday to be going via Klarna, so they'd lose fees that they would pay to Klarna? As it turned out, it actually did benefit them all round. They saw almost no loss of the payday spend. The typical, I've been paid, I'm getting me fancy clothes on, I'm going to the pub. So at least I will be soon. And they found it didn't sort of like cannibalize that. And the problem they're finding, I mean, it is sort of like doing good things on conversion. I think it depends on where your products are, how expensive your products are. So if you're on high volume, low cost kind of things, you can get a serious sort of uplift in basket size on that. If I've got a pair of jeans in there, do you know what? It's paid in 3 installments. I can afford to get a shirt and pair of shoes to go with it, or something like that. You're going to get that uplift. When you're looking at something like a mattress and you're paying £1,000 for a mattress, you're not going to get 2 mattresses too often. But you're more likely to convert, so you might see an uplift in sort of like conversion rate. Again, cost associated with it. I think most of this has been associated with fast fashion in large part. I think you've got something like 25% of users 18 to 24, 15 to 50%, 25 to 36. The problem the FCA have seen, it's predominantly female as well, is messing around with the Klarna app. And again, they might want to sort of like think about their targeting with that. But it's nice. I like the idea of not only can you do the sort of like layaway scheme kind of thing, I can go and buy this and I can pay over 3-4 transactions, happy days. But also here's a market via the Klarna app of all people who are hooked up to Klarna. So it's almost like building a virtual department store there. However, putting stuff in front of me, slightly grizzled 50-something-year-old bloke who likes noisy things and pints of beer, stick in Pretty Little Thing and Boohoo in front of me might satisfy a requirement I have, but not generally. So maybe a little bit of thought about that. But it's 75% female users, 90% fashion and footwear. The problem being is I think about 1 in 10 users have credit issues elsewhere. Klarna just got valued, I think that in September they got valued for investment about 10 billion. They've just taken another round of investment, they've raised another billion or so. They're after 500 million, but people are so into it because of the American growth. They raised $1 billion in investment, so they've been valued at 31 billion. This is a really interesting space. Problem in the UK is, I think there's perhaps overkill. Some people are trying to equate them with sort of like payday loan kind of things. Now, I suspect the FCA is going to get in on regulating spend. You've got to have approved, there's got to be a finance check, which might seem like, well, small transactions. That's going to be overkill for that, to actually go for some kind of credit check associated with that. I think realistically, there are so many services these days, credit score type things, where you can have fast interaction. This person wants to put 150 quid over 3 payments in the next month, 2 months. Is their credit good enough? Do they have outstanding debt? I see very little technological problem with fulfilling that. So I think the UK might lead with, because there was such a furore about the payday loans issues, but I think that will go through. I'm fairly certain there's so much money in it. The various providers won't have a problem with saying, do you know what, we'll just hook up with somebody and do that credit check on the fly. I think it will be fine. I think it's a good thing to do, just to make sure that people aren't finding themselves with late fees as being one of the issues, but like growing subtle debt rather than taking out, 10 grand you can't afford, multiples of 50 quid becomes a problem as well. It's a problem that is easily dealt with. I say easily, it's dealable with.
Yeah. Okay, Tracy?
Yeah, I think for me on this, it very much depends on what brand or retailer message you want to portray, really. I know from like a Russell Hobbs perspective, we want to come across as like a warm, friendly, brand, as probably the most brands, but as part of our kind of brand makeup, brand guidelines, it's that inclusiveness with the consumer. I don't really feel that this responsibility should lie with the brands or retailers on this, because if you're talking about BNPL, you're kind of thinking about Klarna, but then again you've got other payment providers like PayPal Credit. If you don't think at the time that you're adding PayPal functionality into your site that you necessarily need to think about responsibilities of being like a kind of responsible lender, really, or because again, PayPal users can apply for PayPal Credit and pay over 3 months and all those kind of things. So I just think it becomes unmanageable for brands and retailers to kind of think about that as well. And also going back to kind of the demographics, it really does, for me, it really does depend on the products and also the market in which it's sold, because we obviously we sell globally, and the attitudes towards credit or buy now pay later is very, very different across all of those regions. You Spain, for example, would struggle if they haven't got the money, they don't tend to buy it. That's kind of tends to be how it works in Spain, and quite a few other places as well. And Germany, with they have quite stringent regulations on things like this. But yeah, certainly within the UK, when Simon was talking about brands and the age, you need to kind of be really careful, because if they are getting themselves, it's like the old days of, like, you remember like Freeman's catalogues, when people would run up a catalogue bill on the tick. You don't want to become that like the one of those companies that are just doling out products on the never really. But then again, I look at the price points of some of our products within our range, and I think, yes, obviously that would be useful. So maybe certain you want to consider it at certain price points, and also consider the function of that product as well. Like fashion, it's quite, you've got fast fashion, it's quite disposable. But when somebody needs a kettle, for example, and you're British, we drink a lot of tea, your kettle goes bum and you need a kettle next day, and but you're not getting paid for another week, so you're not going to wait a week or so to kind of get a kettle. And those are the kind of things that need to be taken into consideration when I guess when implementing something like this. But for me, I feel that like the responsibility of that is quite a weight to bear for retailers.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Alex Weston.
Yeah, it's I never really thought about my kettle just dying not like what would happen. So it's definitely an important consideration. But I think it's such a hard topic to kind of think about, who's kind of responsible for the well-being of the customers. Does it lie with the buy now, pay later service, or does it lie with the retailer? I think one of the key things, the biggest criticism that I've seen of these types of schemes is that consumers felt that they didn't know what they were getting into or signing up for. And I guess from that perspective, as much clarity as possible from either end is kind of going to be key here. So, I mean, the offerings themselves are hugely beneficial to both merchants and consumers. Simon touched on some of the points that make it so beneficial for a merchant, and I think for consumers as well. It means that they're able to get products that maybe is quicker that they might not be able to otherwise. So I think just kind of ensuring that the message and the terms are as clear as possible to the end consumer is probably one of the first steps that retailers can take. I hadn't really considered that, with a lot of different, if you have a lot of different payment services or offerings on your website, that it is quite a burden for a retailer to kind of manage that themselves. So I think there probably does need to just be a better collaboration between both the retailer and the platforms and the services themselves to kind of make those things clear. But I think that's just based on the biggest criticism that I've seen being that consumers felt that they didn't really understand the terms of what they were getting up for and getting slapped with these kind of late fees as well. And I guess a lot of that will be kind of solved through sort of automated credit checks and things like that Simon was talking about too. So as it kind of becomes more embedded in the way that we operate and the way that retailers operate as well, then I think it will become an easier thing to manage, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Alex Shepherd.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a tough one, the ethics around this, really. We do, sadly, live in a buy now, pay later culture in this country. As Tracy said, different territories, it's very different. But in the UK, that is what people expect. To Simon's point, I worked with Ego Shoes based out of Manchester, targeting 16 to 24-year-old women going for a night out. They wanted shoes for this Saturday, not for the Saturday after payday. So the reality was things like Klarna that we implemented there works incredibly well for them. I guess where I've landed on this is it really comes down to how it's being charged, because at the end of the day, people will come and buy on a credit card if they need to, assuming they can get that credit in the first instance. They will naturally extend their debt. And I think we do all as consumers, as individuals, have to take responsibility for our own actions there. I think that as a merchant, as a retailer, I think probably where they can help and maybe clear their conscience to an extent is if they're offering interest free and that kind of thing. I think about the items that I buy on the tick, and pretty much every time I buy a couch, I buy it on pay monthly, purely because you can and it doesn't cost me anymore. So I kind of end up doing that, and usually it's been when I've been moving house and I've got other things to spend the money on, so it just frees it up a bit. For me, actually, that is help. That is a competitive differentiation. It definitely works. And I do not feel that the retailer should particularly feel responsible for enabling people to develop so much debt there. I think where it really does become a problem is where there's significant finance charges involved. And I know that V12 and some of the others, you can dial up and kind of actually profit from those interest rates as well. And for me, I think that's where the responsibility kicks in, is if people are really profiting from people paying on the tick, that's where I think they need to be aware of it, and where there probably will be backlash in the future.